Hello, and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the 6th grade concept of properties of operations. This is 6.7D, Readiness Practice, the intermediate version. If you are interested in exploring the 6.7D Readiness Practice for the proficient or advanced versions, or the Readiness Practice resource line with any other standard, you can find those by using the link in the video description. So first, we have to generate two equivalent expressions for we've got this 5 parentheses x plus 3. And so let's think about these properties here. What does the commutative property tell us? Well, the commutative property, right, is sometimes called the order property. And so when we're thinking of 5 and then x plus 3, what the order says is when we're multiplying two numbers, when we are adding two numbers, we can use the commutative property to switch the order of the addends or the factors. Now, things change if we switch the order of when we're subtracting or we're dividing, but we can use this for addition. We can use this for multiplication. Okay, so let me show you a few different um, expressions that we could use with this. First, what we could do is we can swap the order of the x and the 3. So we can go 5 and then 3 plus x. So adding x plus 3 and adding 3 plus x is the same as adding 1 plus 2 or 2 plus 1. They both get you 3. So swapping the order of the addends is not going to make any difference. That's one thing we can do with the commutative property. We can also swap where that 5 is sitting. Now, typically, we'll put the 5 in the front because it's 5 times, and then x plus 3 is all working together. But what if we did this? X plus 3 times 5. It looks a little bit strange. Either one of those work. So that's how we can use it, or the commutative property to switch the order of the addends or put that factor on the backside. That works. Now, let's look at our distributive property. Okay, the distributive property is when we break stuff apart. All right, so when we take our 5 and our x plus 3, okay, so what we do is we take that 5 and we multiply by each of the addends on the inside. So it's 5 times x. We still keep that addition in there. And then we do the 5 times the 3. Now, we can't simplify 5x because we don't know what the x is. So 5x is already simplified. We can go ahead and simplify that 5 times 3. So we could write it like this. That's one equivalent expression. Or we can write 5x plus 15. And that distributive property is essential because we'll be using it for the rest of our mathematical lives, going backwards and forwards with it. So those are different expressions that we can use using the commutative property or the distributive property, but I will say your answers may vary. So if you have some equivalent expressions that are not here, then you still might have it correct. You're just wanting to use some of these properties. All right, so we're going to use more equivalent expressions for 7 plus a plus 0, and let's name our properties. Okay, so one property that we have not used in this video is the associative property. All right, so our associative property is the grouping property. So I'm going to put this in parentheses underneath. So once again, it works with addition, it works with multiplication. And so what this tells us is that if I take my original expression here, so what I'm doing, the parentheses is grouping the a plus the 0, right? What I could do is, since I'm just adding straight across, I don't have to add the a and the 0 first. It's not really doing anything since I'm just going to end up adding everything together, right? The parentheses are basically useless if you think of the order of operations. So that lets me regroup. If I want, I can shift these parentheses over here. 7 plus a plus 0. And so the grouping property lets me shift the parentheses and add the addends in different order, or add the factors if I'm doing multiplication in different order, right? So, for example, the grouping property if I'm doing 3 times 4 times 2, right, I can either add those or multiply those first, or I can multiply those first. It doesn't really matter because I'm just going to get the same thing. But it only works when you're dealing with all multiplication or all addition. If you start adding division or subtraction in there, or even addition and multiplication, things change. So it works with just all of the same operation, either addition or multiplication. I could also use the identity property. Sometimes we think of this as our zero property, because hopefully we notice that adding zero doesn't do anything. So when we're doing multiplication, it's about adding zero. When we're doing addition, excuse me, we're adding zero. When we're using multiplication, it's multiplying by 1. But basically, nothing happens. So we can go 7 plus a plus 0. Anything plus 0 is itself. So basically, we can just make that 0 disappear because we know that anything plus 0 is itself. So we can say 3 times 1 equals 3. We don't need to show a times 1 because it's just itself. That's the identity property. Okay, so those are two different expressions that we could use, and those are the names of the properties that we could use. You might be able to can't use the distributive property, but you might be able to use the commutative property if you wanted to. And so I'll go ahead and throw this up here in case you need it. Remember, the commutative property is the order property. You could have just rearranged the add-ins, right? So 7 plus a plus 0, let's make that 0 a little bit bigger, equals 7 plus and then 0 plus a. Just swap the order there. Or you could have had this, you could have made it a plus 0 in parentheses equals 7 or plus 7. So there's a few different ways we could have done that. Answers might vary. So for our third problem, let's rewrite this using the distributive property. All right, so we do need to go ahead and distribute this out. So what this means is I'm going to take my 1/4, and since it's on the outside of the parentheses, it's being multiplied by these two different terms, the y plus 3. I'm going to take this 1/4 and I'm going to multiply it by both, keeping my addition in the middle. So that means I'm going to take my 1/4, I'm going to multiply it by the 3, then I'm going to take my 1/4, I'm going to multiply it by the y. So I'm going to do both of them. It's going to end up looking like that. Now I can simplify this a little bit. I don't really need parentheses between the 1/4 and the y. So I can just leave this as 1/4 y, and then 1/4 times 3, right, times 3. Think of it as 3 over 1. When you multiply fractions, you go straight across. This would probably be best represented by 3/4. So 1/4 y plus 3/4 is that simplest form using our distributive property. If you are interested in exploring the 6.7D Readiness Practice resource aligned with the Proficient or Advanced version, or the Readiness Practice resource aligned with any other standard, you can find those by using the link in the video description.